Making even the simplest, most basic movie is extremely hard. The results of intense collaboration between hundreds or even thousands of people to get the job done. And more than anything, it represents a creative tug of war between filmmakers simply trying to put their vision out into the world, and producers and studio executives more concerned about the business end of the deal. This often requires directors to get creative in order to get their own way. But to the same token, sometimes the studio employs sneaky chicanery to ensure things turn out how they want. As much as one is naturally inclined to side with an artist over the people signing the checks, you nevertheless have to give credit where it's due. And in the case of these 10 movies, the studios did something very smart to get their way. So, with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Whatculture, here with 10 genius times studios beat the film director. Number 10. Letting Tarantino keep the anime sequence if he split the film in two, Kill Bill. Harvey Weinstein may be an awful human being for many reasons. But as the co-founder of Studio Miramax, he was also an extremely shrewd and successful businessman. Weinstein earned the nickname Harvey Scissorhands around Hollywood for his tendency to insist upon ruthless cuts to movies. But when it came to Quentin Tarantino and Kill Bill, he came up with an altogether smarter solution that gave everyone what they wanted. Originally, Tarantino shot Kill Bill as a single film from his hefty 197-page script, but during editing it became clear that the film was running too long. And so, Weinstein presented Tarantino with a choice. Either cut unnecessary scenes like the iconic animated sequence, or agree to split the film into two parts and include everything he wants. It is admittedly a plan that only really worked because Tarantino was a named director coming off a huge 6-year absence between movies, and so audiences were absolutely thirsty for more from him. If Tarantino wasn't a name commodity, Weinstein would have surely just hacked Kill Bill to pieces. Yet this way, Tarantino was able to retain his artistic integrity, while Weinstein got 2 box office hits for the price of 1, with the duology grossing over $330 million globally against a combined $60 million budget. Number 9. Replacing Philip Kaufman with the movie's star Clint Eastwood, The Outlaw Josey Wales. Now here's something you simply couldn't get away with today, and assuredly with good reason. The hit Clint Eastwood western The Outlaw Josey Wales was originally directed by the great Philip Kaufman, who also co-wrote the film. But mere weeks into shooting, ongoing disagreements with star Eastwood saw him fired by producer Robert Daly at Eastwood's request. More to the point, Warner Brothers installed Eastwood as Kaufman's replacement, and even with mounting pressure from the Directors Guild of America to reinstate Kaufman, they retained Eastwood and even paid a $60,000 fine for firing the original director. Yet the rest of the shoot apparently went off without a hitch, and The Outlaw Josey Wales went on to become both a box office hit and one of Eastwood's most iconic cinematic roles. It was certainly a smart way to resolve a tricky conflict by the studio, even if it ultimately led to the DGA to create the Eastwood rule, which prevented any actor or producer from firing a director and then taking the job themselves. Number 8. Letting writer Alex Garland take over the editing process, Dredd. Dredd was directed by Pete Travis and written by Alex Garland, but during post-production, Travis found himself bristling up against producers and studio executives over the final cut of the film. Travis's decision to trim down prominent action beats created friction with the studio, who eventually resorted to locking Travis out of the editing room entirely and instead bringing in Garland to complete an edit that reinstated much of the action. Ultimately, Garland's post-production work was considered significant enough that he could seek a co-director credit, though he did choose not to. Once word got out about the behind-the-scenes issues, Travis and Garland issued a joint statement insisting their work was an unorthodox collaboration. And though Dredd sadly flopped at the box office, surely unaided by lackluster marketing selling it with the gimmicky title Dredd 3D, it received strong reviews from critics and quickly became a cult hit, going to become a strong seller on home video. Given that the gorgeous action sequences remain one of Dredd's most lauded aspects, the studio was smart to appreciate Garland's instincts as a filmmaker before he'd even actually directed anything himself. And all the same, Travis still got to take credit for the movie's positive reception, given that he shot all of the footage and at the end of the day is the only credited director. Number 7. Convincing James Cameron to direct for free, Titanic. It's no secret that production on James Cameron's Titanic was a trying nightmare nightmare for just about everyone involved, in large part due to the shoot running massively over budget and over schedule. By the time it was finished, Titanic cost $200 million, almost double its original $110 million price tag, ensuring that co-financiers Paramount Pictures and 20th Century Fox grew extremely nervous about the epic disaster film's box office prospects. And so Cameron ultimately came to an agreement with the studios to ease their understandable concerns. He not only forfeited his $8 million directing salary, but agreed to give up his cut of the initial gross, ensuring he would only be paid if the movie was a hit. But amid a slew of negative press convinced the movie would bomb, Titanic released to rave reviews and went on to have a historic box office run, grossing over $2.2 billion, including a couple of re-releases. As a result, the studios made a fortune, while Cameron eventually received a stonking payday estimated to be in excess of $100 million. Basically, it was a happy ending for all involved, but Paramount and Fox were smart to cover their asses up front by persuading a world-class filmmaker to work for free. Number 6. Dismissing Edgar Wright as director, but keeping his script, Ant-Man. Marvel fans were elated when Edgar Wright was hired to write and direct Ant-Man, and then positively crushed when he and Marvel parted ways on the project shortly before shooting was set to begin. In more recent years, it's emerged that Wright grew frustrated with Marvel Studios' desire to strip away his own filmmaking flourishes and ensure the film remained part of their cohesive cinematic universe. And so Marvel ultimately decided to dismiss Wright and bring in a more malleable filmmaker, Peyton Reed, to basically work as a hired gun. From Marvel's perspective, it certainly made sense for one good reason. Despite Wright's departure, he'd still given the production the strong bones of a script, which were then rewritten to more appropriately fit the tone of the MCU. While significant changes were made to Wright and Joe Cornish's original script, many cast members over the years have revealed that the fundamentals of the story and many of the ideas were indeed Wright and Cornish's. And so, though we technically never got the Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie we wanted, Marvel Studios nevertheless got to retain the filmmaker's better ideas while shaping it into something better aligned with their own goals. Despite the initial outrage over Wright's departure, it was a smart call from a business perspective. Number 5. Having Richard Lester reshoot most of the movie and still turning a huge profit, Superman II. The first two Christopher Reeve starring Superman movies were initially shot back-to-back, with Richard Donner set to helm both movies. But once 75% of Superman II had been shot, it was decided to focus on completing the first film due to disagreements between Donner and producers over the schedule and budget. And so Superman was completed and released to considerable success, after which Donner was fired from Superman 2 and replaced with director Richard Lester, who, in order to receive a directing credit, reshot the majority of Donner's Superman 2 footage. The theatrical Lester cut of Superman 2 consisted primarily of Lester's new footage combined with a little of Donner's, and despite the astronomical costs involved in reshooting so much material, it still grossed more than triple its $54 million budget, even if it wasn't nearly as well received as its predecessor. And all the better, Warner Brothers were effectively able to leverage the controversy surrounding the film's production to double-dip decades later, when they allowed Donner to complete editing the Donner Cut, which was released on home video to strong reviews in 2006. Take all the behind-the-scenes maneuvering away, and Warner Brothers got to make profit from two versions of the same movie. Number 4. Refusing Woody Allen's request to shelve it, Manhattan. In the late 1970s, Woody Allen could seemingly do no wrong. Hot off the Oscar-winning success of Annie Hall and his Oscar-nominated follow-up Interiors, expectations were high for his next movie, Manhattan. Yet the director himself wasn't at all happy with the film, and even went as far as to ask distributor United Artists to not release the $9 million romantic dramedy, on the condition that he'd shoot his next film for them for free. Allen said of the movie, "I just thought to myself, at this point in my life, if this is the best I can do, they shouldn't give me money to make movies." Nevertheless, United Artists evidently knew better and refused Allen's request, releasing the film to considerable commercial success, grossing over $40 million worldwide, as well as scoring rave reviews and netting 2 Oscar nominations. More to the point, had the studio taken Allen up on his offer, they would have been massively shortchanged, given that his next film for them, Stardust Memories, was a huge box office flop. This way, Manhattan's enormous success more than covered that movie's losses, no matter Allen's opinion on it. Number 3. Parting ways with M. Night Shyamalan just before his flop era, The Lady in the Water. M. Night Shyamalan broke into mainstream prominence with the release of the Oscar-nominated box office smash The Sixth Sense, which also marked the director's first collaboration with Disney under their Buena Vista Pictures label. Shyamalan's subsequent 3 movies were also distributed by Disney, and while failing to match the success of his Hollywood debut, Unbreakable, Signs, and The Village all turned solid profits. Yet for his next movie, Lady in the Water, Shyamalan had a falling out with Disney after he learned that Walt Disney Studios chairman Dick Cook didn't understand the premise of the fantasy thriller. With his creativity being questioned, Shyamalan decided to pull the plug on the project at Disney and took it instead to Warner Brothers, where it was a colossal critical and commercial flop, and even netted Shyamalan dual Razzie Awards for Worst Director and Worst Supporting Actor. Shyamalan struggled with a series of big-budget duds in the years that followed, as he worked with a variety of different studios, all while Disney surely counted their lucky stars that they cut ties with him just as his career fell off a cliff. While executives failing to understand creativity often suggests a businessman that's out of touch, in this case Dick Cook was 100% on the money, because Lady in the Water was terrible, and he clearly knew in his bones it was a money pit waiting to happen. Unsurprisingly, Shyamalan and Disney haven't worked together in a major way since The Village, and it's probably for the best. Number 2. Letting Edward Norton edit the movie instead, American History X. New Line Cinema faced quite the challenging post-production on American History X, largely due to first-time feature director Tony Kaye flat out refusing to play ball regarding the movie's final cut. Though Kaye's first cut tested well with audiences, New Line insisted upon a more finessed edit containing more footage and even allowed star Edward Norton to help complete the new cut. This didn't sit well with Kaye at all, who infamously said, "I'm fully aware that I'm a first-time director, but I need the same autonomy and respect that Stanley Kubrick gets." Kaye's behaviour became increasingly volatile, reportedly punching a wall, taking out a $100,000 print ad criticising New Line and Norton, and even trying to have his directing credit removed and replaced with Humpty Dumpty, which unsurprisingly was refused. Ultimately, with Kaye refusing to get on side, New Line released the Norton cut of the movie, which was 24 minutes longer than his own, without the director's blessing. Despite flopping at the box office, the film released to rave reviews and scored Norton a Best Actor Oscar nomination, and so the studio is probably pretty happy that they went with Norton's more involved cut of the movie. As for Kaye, the controversy seriously hobbled his filmmaking career. Although, after finally watching the film in 2007, he admitted that the entire kerfuffle was his fault, citing his own ego. Number 1. Refusing to move the release date to add terrible comic book panels, The Warriors. Walter Hill's 1979 action thriller The Warriors is a bona fide cult classic, yet during the production, Hill had some more adventurous ideas about the film's style. Hill, a huge fan of comic books, wanted to divide the story into delineated chapters and have each chapter framed by an animated comic book panel, an idea which naturally gave studio Paramount pause. But Paramount had 2 easy excuses to deny indulging Hill. Firstly, the film was being produced on a small $4 million budget, and secondly, its release date was already firmly locked in, as Paramount was desperate to release it before a similarly themed rival film, The Wanderers, later that year. And so, with an unmovable release date, Paramount had no choice but to nix Hill's comic book ambitions, and The Warriors went on to gross more than 5-fold its budget, while becoming a cult fave that sold well on home video ever since. Hill did, however, get to fulfill his ambitions eventually with the 2015 Ultimate Director's Cut DVD, featuring the proposed comic book panels. However, given that the general fan response to this edition was predominantly negative, Paramount was clearly 100% right to refuse him in the first place.